Hey everyone, welcome back to Grace Note Forge. So today I got another review for you guys, and I'm going to be checking out this rolling mill by VEVOR. This is their 75mm 3-in-1 rolling mill, which is currently listed for $145 US on the VEVOR website. And they did send this to me a little bit ago for free, but just like my other reviews, I'm not obligated to only say nice things or anything. This is just purely going to be my thoughts on the machine. So just a quick peek inside the box so you can see how it ships. And everything seemed pretty well packaged, and it comes with everything that you're going to need to get up and running, including this extra half-round roller for some of those bigger sizes. And taking out the roller itself, I will say that this thing is pretty hefty. I think it comes in at a little over 36 pounds, but it feels like a really solid steel construction. So at first glance, I was kind of worried that my rollers came rusted, just from that darker color, but they're actually covered in this protective paper, and that's just to make sure that they're saturated with oil during shipping. So those come off pretty easy, but for the bigger ones, they were kind of pinched in between the rollers. So I just had to put on the T-handle first so I can loosen that up. And this just fits up pretty snugly in between these larger gears. Then you can just screw the nut back on underneath. So after taking off these paper covers, I went ahead and wiped down all that excess oil that was on the rollers and got ready to install the handle. And that just fits over here on the right side of the machine and screws on with the included hardware. So in order to rotate the arm around, it does need to kind of hang off the side of a table. So I'm just going to move it over here on the side of my bench. That way I have plenty of space to rotate the handle around. Now it does come with some hardware and mounting holes at the bottom of the rolling mill, so you can bolt it in place. But I'm not positive I want it living in this spot just yet, so I'm going to try to get away with just leaving it unbolted for now while I do some testing. So one of the really nice things about having a rolling mill is the ability to kind of reuse any bits of scrap that you have lying around and form those into whatever shape that you might need. So I'm going to melt down some silver scrap that I have here, and I'm actually going to use this little graphite mold that I've never really ended up using very much before, but it works great for getting these kind of rough shapes that I want to start with. And I went ahead and filed those down just to make them a little more flat. And before I take them to the roller, I need to kind of cold forge these down. So the rollers on the mill only spread to about 6.5 millimeters max, which is why I'm trying to hammer these down to get them just a little bit thinner to start. And after a bit of hammering, you can really feel when that silver starts to feel a bit tougher and overall just has less give. So at that point it needs to be annealed and softened back up. And to do that, all you need to do is just heat the silver back up to a nice cherry red and then quench it in water. And you'll need to anneal the metal every so often throughout the entire rolling mill process. This is just to keep the metal soft and prevent it from cracking. And it's nice to see that they actually have some instructions for annealing in the manual. So first I'm going to try making some half-rounded stock for some rings. And I'm going to start off in the largest square grooves in the roller. And I'm really not pressing too hard or anything, just to start off. Really, I'm just trying to even out the stock. And after a bit, I started pressing down harder, So I'm doing maybe about half turns on each pass max. And with that, it really didn't take long to actually stretch out and take shape. And even with the rollers, you can pretty easily feel when that metal is starting to work harden. So every time I noticed that, I would just pause and anneal the metal really quick just to soften it back up. And after a couple dozen passes or so, I finally got it down to a pretty good thickness for a ring. And you can see it stretched out quite a bit longer, and it's now sitting at about 3.5 millimeters square. So I just annealed that down one more time before flattening that down a little bit more to get more of a rectangular shape. And after that, I wanted to do a little bit more of a half round just on the corners, just to soften up the edges on one side. And the metal tends to curl up quite a bit from the half round just because of how it squeezes out. But it really doesn't take that much to straighten it back out. And overall, I think it came out really great. So next I wanted to try to make some silver sheet. So I started feeding the silver through this flat section of the rollers. And this is where bolting down the mill really would have been ideal, because it takes quite a bit more force to flatten out the stock than to use those grooves. So I think it's definitely worth it to bolt this down if you're able to. And it also really helps to keep up with annealing the metal, especially for these larger pieces. But once it started to get a little bit thinner, I wasn't even touching the dial at all. I just ended up feeding it through several times just to make sure that it was a pretty nice and even thickness. And all in all, this piece came to roughly 100 millimeters by 20 millimeters and has a pretty even thickness of about 0.7 millimeters. And you can see this part on the edge here where it started cracking a little bit. I found that as the piece gets thinner is when you really want to take some extra care to make sure the metal is annealed pretty often. So this is actually my first time using a rolling mill, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. But all in all, I think that this machine works really great, especially for my needs. A lot of my work has been mostly in wax carving and CAD work for 3D printing and casting. But this machine is super versatile and opens the door for a lot of different projects. If you're interested in picking one up for yourself and also want to help support my work, I'll leave an affiliate link down below to where you can find this exact model. And let me know if there's any specific projects that you guys want to see made with this machine. I'm always happy to try some new things and share my experience with learning these tools with you guys. But that's it for today. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.